Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome to the Erudition Network interactive question and answer session. I have my sons on here with me today, so that I'm not alone. But
Hello.
no, but this has been a really crazy time, and I just wanted to start this off real quickly by saying I thank every one of you who come on and spend time with us. We changed our day to Thursday to better facilitate during the week. Hopefully, that people could be able to come on and interact. But this is the thing. Over the last few lessons, I've been very frustrated, and I want to apologize if I come off that I did come off very frustrated. But we are living in such crazy times, and when we try to look at our history or teach Black history, you're going and looking in times where just as bad or even worse, and it's very hard to teach that and to go and delve into that and not be affected by it, both present and even by what was. But I just want to thank every one of you who have come on or who have left responses for us, supportive responses for us over the last few weeks that we've been doing this. We will continue. And I just wanted to say that I really wanted to be able to just communicate my appreciation for everyone who sticks with us as we go into these beginning episodes and things that we're doing for Erudition. So, as I said, I have my sons here today. We're going to touch a little bit on some of the things that I talked about last week, but we're also, or last Saturday, but then we're going to kind of get into a discussion today, because I feel that for today, we really need to try to get young people, and of course you all too, young people's impressions on what we're experiencing. One, what they've been taught about older times, that because those lessons should help us as we go further, right? As we go further in our journey in this world. But I, last Saturday, took the time to go in and try to kind of pull the scab off and try to look at the history of lynching. That's a powerful thing to talk about, and it's something that as I was going through it, it draws out emotions. It frustrates you. I don't think that I was even still ready, even after it. I'm going to share with you my screen here to show one part of the lesson that I covered Saturday. And we talked about the George Floyd case. But you will notice, boys, can you see this okay? Is everything good?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You will notice this picture. When I was going through the lesson and I was trying to see what we were going to talk about, this picture stood out to me. And I hate to show George Floyd in his death, but this is such an important thing to look at. You will see this picture from the 1800s of a young boy being lynched. And I want you to direct your attention to the far right. You see that, boys? Mm-hmm. And what do you see that man with the coattails? What is he doing?
The man with the coattails.
Can you blow it up a bit more? It just shrunk.
Okay. I can. Let's blow it up a little more. All right. Right here. This guy right here. You see him?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's doing the same thing. And my point to this, because I want to move away from this shot, I hate looking at this picture, is that supremacy, we know it to be a fact, has a long memory. It has a long memory, and it is an accepted mentality that if we look back 100 years ago or 200 years ago, we find similar mentality, similar gestrations, things that they do. When I saw this picture, it made me realize that Chauvin's hand in his pocket and this man in his pocket in this 1800 picture are so similar as they watch a black person die. And we're going to move away from this. Saturday, I talked about what Ida B. Wells talked about, right? And what Ida wanted everybody to know, and what this courageous woman did, and the Red Record, and all of her, and even every one of her collected works, she wanted to show the idea that what is this thing that we call lynching? We have just seen black people and brown people being shot in the media for about the last 50 years. It's been going on, but we just saw several cases of cops shooting. And I was so frustrated recently because I kept saying to myself, this is lynching. This is lynching. And I think that we really need to understand what lynching is. And Ida gave such a great definition of lynching. She said it is the creature of an hour, the sudden outburst of uncontrolled fury, or the unspeakable brutality of an insane person or mob. It represents that cool, calculating deliberation of intelligent people who openly avow that there is an unwritten law that justifies them putting human beings to death without complaint under oath, without trial or jury. The biggest part to take away from this, and the reason why I'm going back to look at this again, is the idea of the unwritten law. The unwritten law. Most of us don't know that when the police came into being, right? When they established the first urban police force in the United States, it was because of fear of blacks. That's not a make-believe thing. That is a fact. They feared blacks. And post the Denmark Vessies and the Nat Turners, it only increased. The police's job at that time was not to investigate crime. It was to enforce law on African Americans, on blacks, freemen and slave. I pulled an article just this morning about a situation that happened in 1847. In 1847, a white woman had a slave. This was in Charleston. And she had this slave, and the slave, I think she was 62 years old. And she was an older slave and had been with the family. Well, the woman called her doctor. The white woman called her doctor. Her doctor came over because the woman had anxiety. So the doctor came over to treat the woman and found that she was in an anxious state. And as he went upstairs, she didn't tell him, but as he went upstairs to go get something for her, he saw that her black slave was laying on the floor dead, bleeding out of the head and different parts of the body. The doctor went back downstairs, and not wanting to excite the woman, he didn't ask her about it. He treated her and he left. One of the other people from the house came in, saw the slave, and they reported it. And back then, again, I will say to you that the police weren't there to enforce the law on whites. So when they asked for the woman's statement of what happened, because it was supposed to be against the law for you to kill a slave on the books, because it was property. The only way that you could kill a slave was that you had to be doing it in the act of penalty or law enforcement. In 1669, there was a such thing called the Casual Killing Act, and I would ask you to look that up. And basically what the Casual Killing Act did is what I just said. It allowed you to kill a slave, to kill a person, a black person, only if you were disciplining them or you were doing something in order to stop them from doing something bad. I say this because when this woman, Ezra, the white woman, made her statement, she said that the reason why the black woman died was because she had been bad. That was what she said on the official statement. She had been bad. So she called over, and forgive me, everyone who hears this, a nigger breaker. And they came over to the house, and they beat this elderly woman about the head, knuckles, and body until she passed out and died. Now, when they asked the nigger breaker, who was a black slave, when they asked him what happened, he said, I just came over to stop her from being bad. They didn't charge the black person. But a funny thing is this: no white person, no black person could testify for that Negro. He was judged by 3 magistrates who made the decision not to charge him. And they made the decision not to charge him because they didn't want the white woman to be charged. What am I saying with this case? We're saying that lynching was happening in the homes. It was happening everywhere. They were killing. And the law permitted it. The law made it okay. The law told us that we didn't have a place. Boys, do you remember me telling you about black codes?
Yes.
Yes.
So, for those who aren't out here who don't know, from 1865 to 1866, post-Civil War, before Jim Crow, there was this idea of black codes. Black codes were also used to enforce this idea of black criminality that led to lynching, both by the state and in person. And one of the cruelest things about black codes was that you weren't given your civil rights, right? Even though the amendments had been passed and slavery was over, even though a war had been fought and many people had died, black codes came into place to replace the idea of slavery. When you look, there are a couple of things to note from this, and this is something that you need to you can look up, and I will leave reference for everyone that is out there. One of the first things that was added in these black codes, and I'm going to switch this slide because I want to get to this part right here, was the disenfranchisement, the denial of your civil rights to the freedmen. In other words, it was declared that persons of color had not the right to acquire, own, or dispose of property or make contracts. But wait a minute. The Constitution said that I could. Said I was a citizen. And you couldn't make a contract. And because if you couldn't make a contract, that meant you couldn't have any employment. If you couldn't have any employment, that meant that you were basically out there living on your own, free. And what did they call that? Vagrancy. When I talked about this Saturday, I talked about the idea of why lynching and the idea of a state-sanctioned murder became so important. Hold on. Gina had a question. She said, question is it true that Congress still has not outlawed lynching? Yes.
Yes.
It is absolutely true. As a matter of fact, they have not outlawed it in both the House and the Senate. The House just recently passed a bill to outlaw lynching. The Senate bill went up with Vice President Kamala Harris when she was a senator, and Senator Booker, I believe, and it almost went up until a Republican decided to fight against it. One of the ones who supposedly helped write the bill. So, no, there are certain things called lynching laws, right, that have been in place for hundreds of years. As a matter of fact, I think we talked about this Saturday. I think, yes, the 1780 lynch law that was created in Pennsylvania County, Virginia. But what it was really supposed to be for, it was supposed to be for horse thievery, property theft. And so they would lynch or allow people to be killed outside of the court system or punished by execution by private citizens. But it turned on black people post-slavery. And that's when we get back into the idea of why, right? One of the things that I get so angry about and I get so passionate about is the emergence of black criminal belief. It is such a problem because, you see, we still believe to this day that we're criminals. Some of us still had this idea of the push, the manipulation, the conditioning that we're criminals. And we have to know why that is. Because all of the lynchings, the shootings, the disproportionate laws, everything that's happening in our society, unfortunately, comes from the idea of this emergence of black criminal belief that is accepted, that is loved by it's insane. So when we think about, as Regina asked that question, that's an awesome question, because yes, why is it that a country cannot make lynching illegal? But we talked about that. We've talked about that so much over the last, but I'm going to make it really plain to all of us. I wanted to give revelations of why. The community revelation was lynching of the original Negro would cool fears and make white people feel safe. That sounds like today. See, locking them up and killing blacks kept them from voting and reduced their numbers. Psychologically, it also made other whites fear black people, black children. You know, there's a psychological study that says that black children are not seen as children. Cops have taken these studies and they don't see a child. They see a grown black person. So when we get angry about the idea of them shooting our children, they don't see a child. That is a conditioned mentality that has been accepted by society. I told my sons we would do about 30 minutes where we would go back into this because I felt that a lot of this was lost. A lot of this was lost. When I'm trying to get to this slide, the question arose in white society: how do you control black freemen and stop your fears of these worries? How did the white people, what were they going to be able to do, the racist whites, I should say white people, to stop this? Imprisonment, lynching, and that caused terror. Boys, I got a question for you. Do you think that these three things are still relevant today? Do you think that they're controlling the fears by doing these same three things today?
Yeah.
Yes. We just recently saw that with 2 kids.
Joe asked us, is lynching covered under hate crimes? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But the part of that that's so hard to prove is how they've tried to change the law so much so that it can't be construed as a lynching. Over the last 6 years, we've had about, I think when I looked it up, we've had about 12 to 15 people hung in woods, black people who have been found hanging.
Yeah, you remember that? They were
And every time that they find black people hanging, what they say is
suicide.
suicide. Because, see, we don't want to go back and think about how that, a lot of people want to keep moving forward and never look backwards. When we talked the other day, we talked about some of the lynching situations. And I'm going to ask out there, since a lot of people are on today, and I'm so appreciative of you guys interacting, but let me ask you a question. How many people, from what you see on my screen right now, how many people know about at least 2 of these lynchings? Before we putting this on here, how many of you could say you knew at least 2 of these? Boys, that's for you too.
We know at least 2. George Floyd.
People's Grocery.
Sean Anthony, can you give me a synopsis of the People's Grocery?
The People's Grocery was a case where a bunch of black people were in a grocery store and were shot at by police and the only reason that they were able to be killed was because of the fact that they put down their guns. If they hadn't done that, they would have slaughtered every last cop in that area. But they put down their guns and they were killed for it.
For the simple fact of shooting at cops, nonetheless.
Regina said they see a threat when they see us. That we are just as good and better than them. That we are created equal by God. Yes, we are created equal by God. That's an excellent point. And
that reminds me of Animal Farm. If anybody remembers Animal Farm, it's some people are equal, but others are more equal. And that's an idea of supremacy. So I'm going to tell you, Sean Anthony, you're almost right. I see your uncle said, Robert Charles, I know. Yes. The People's Grocery case, you're absolutely right. But I would not say that they died because they put their guns down. The People's Grocery case happened because, and it's documented only because Ida B. Wells was friends with the owner of that store. It's more nefarious than that. It started basically with just 2 kids fighting. A white kid and a black kid fighting over marbles. But that's really not what it's about. It was about the store across the street that a white man owned. And because the People's Grocery did better business than him, he showed up with cops. And when he showed up with cops, he tried to pistol whip a black man, and the black man pulled a gun out of his hand, and a shot was fired. They left, they dispersed. Then they came back that evening. But black people had guns and they shot. And when they put their guns down, it's because they said, we didn't know that these was cops out here who came to shoot up the store. So they put them in jail. And then a mob of whites went into the jail, pulled the three people out, pulled them to the railroad tracks, and killed them, cut them, beat them, and murdered them. With the press there to watch and take notes. That's what should be known about that. To enforce an example.
But is that covered in your history books?
No.
Did you ever hear about People's Grocery? So Pastor Razor said, interesting, I grew up in a town about 20 miles west of Memphis, and this was not talked about. And it wouldn't be. Because see, we have to keep the idea of supremacy, but when we murder, because you are still a citizen, we have to do it outside the law. We're not going to give you the chance to get off, to have a right. So when they murdered and lynched her, shout out to you. Remember what Mr. Moe, what the man who owned the store, you remember what he said? What the press said that he said? Do you remember that?
No, not clearly.
He said, "Tell my people there's no justice in this land." That was the last words out of his mouth before they shot him to death. Lynching is a part of this American experiment, as they used to call it when I was a kid. And an experiment dictates the fact that they don't know if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, yet they claim it's a melting pot.
But what are you melting? What are you melting us into?
Into you.
Yeah, into your society to serve you.
Joseph said, money and property are at the root. Yes, because a lot of this, when we look at the Robert Charles case in New Orleans, people say, oh, wow, yes, it's crazy. The Robert Charles case, again, black man in a what was perceived a white neighborhood, but was really a mulatto neighborhood. He's in the neighborhood. It's him and a friend and a girl. White cop, this story sounds so much like today. White cop comes up, two of them, and he says, what you doing in this neighborhood? Robert gets up to leave. The cop saw it as a sign of aggression, pulled out his weapon, and he shot at him. Robert pulled out his gun, shot back at the cop, wounded the cop. So then what happens is Robert gets away and he goes to go into hiding because he's injured. And then someone in his own community, black man, tells him, hey, he's over here. So they show up with a posse, not the police coming to arrest him. They show up with the white rabble to come get him and lynch him. But see, Robert, you got to look at the time, 1900. Robert knew that they liked to lynch. And he had made, in his writing, he had said that Ida B. Wells found he wasn't going to go out like that. So Robert, when they showed up, he shot at them. And truth be told, over the days, Robert killed about 9 people. Cops and white folks. Every time they tried to get to that house, he shot them. Now, I don't justify murder, but he said, you're not going to get me without a fight. So what do? They got close enough, they burned down the house. Robert crawls out the house. Some white kid luckily gets a shot on him and kills, mortally wounds him. Some reports say he killed him, some reports said he wasn't. But what do? This shows you the savagery and the mentality of lynching. They pulled his body out of that house. They knifed it, they cut it, they burned it. They mutilated, they beat it, they took parts of it. They dragged him through town with the police like it was a parade. Because this black man refused to be secondary. To be told, what you mean you're going to beat and kill me because I'm visiting someone? We have to know that lynching is a deep thing, and that's why I wanted to talk about it today. And I really wanted to talk about it today. Joe said Jesus was lynched.
Yes, and they made a very big production out of lynching.
And they teach you it every single day.
Say that louder, Sean Anthony. What you say?
They teach you about how Jesus died every day.
But do they teach you about these people that we see on this screen right here?
Nope.
And it's funny.
In some cases, haven't even been brought to light completely.
We bring up Jesus, and yet Jesus only gave us one commandment to love one another. Instead, we would go and commit such barbarity towards one another.
Because it goes into what you just said a second ago, Teddy. Everyone is born equal, but some are born more equal.
They think that they're born equal. It's not the truth.
That's a great statement, Cuzzo. Lynching's majesty is human humility. It's public humility. That's true. Regina said she heard about what happened on Black Wall Street, but a lot of stuff's not in the history book. Do y'all know what this picture? I know this is some sensitive stuff. You see this picture in the middle of this PowerPoint? It's two middle pictures here. There's a man laying against a tree. He's burned and scorched, and there are people in the bottom of it all around. It's really three pictures.
I remember that. It's the
That's Jesse Washington.
the cooking of Jesse Washington.
For 2 hours.
They cooked that man on a stake for 2 hours. And then cut parts off of him.
Yeah. And people were still finding parts 40, 50 years after the fact.
As souvenirs.
They're sending out
Always-
postcards.
always-
That's why we have so many pictures of it. But one of the things that's more shocking about Jesse's case, I think that's more shocking, is that we have to see, if you see this picture right here at the bottom, I'm going to try to get in real close. You see this picture right here? See all those people? And his body is right there? How many people you think was out there that day? You remember what historically they said it was?
No, they never taught us in grave detail about Jesse Washington.
Almost 20,000 people showed up for the killing and murder and cooking, as you said it, of Jesse Washington. 20,000 people before the time of radio and really modern film. They had a parade, they had a celebration. Phillips said that white cops killing unarmed black people is modern day lynching, in my opinion. Yes. And let's get back to that. Let's get back to that
The
thing.
definition of lynching, to be killed without a trial. These people weren't. You just executed someone without cause, reason, justification whatsoever. You took your time. You took a moment and killed someone simply because you could.
Well, that's astute, and that's actually the part and the problem. Let's get back to those black codes real quick, right? So, if you didn't have a job in the black codes, and I put this thing on the convict lease system, if you didn't have a job during right after the Civil War and then Reconstruction, you were a vagrant. And the codes relied on vagrancy. What it said is that vagrancy laws put pressure on freedmen to sign back onto plantations. Because remember, like I said, you were limiting your contracting. They didn't give you that 40 acres and a mule. So if you weren't at work, and we want to think about the fact that we had a lot of black people going around trying to find their lost families. And so a lot of them went out to go try to find places to go work, places to go be. Some were blessed enough to find black towns and create black towns, which created those churches, those historically black churches. And that's the purpose and the point of a historical black church. That's where people lived, stayed, ate, got taught, found God. It was the first building built in those black towns, and they lived there. And the church helped people build their homes. The church helped people find jobs and shops. Because if you came to a town and you didn't have anything, you were a slave. We all here to help each other. We don't see that today. And I ain't clowning church folks, but I'm just gonna tell you, if I gotta find a place to be, because I don't want to be lynched, I don't want to be locked up, I don't want to be absconded, put away, killed, whatever, I'm going to go find me a place to be. That's why you had towns like Rosewood. That's why you had Tulsa. That's why you had those towns that were built to provide protection to black people. Because if you weren't, you were a vagrant. And if you was a vagrant, the code said provided vagrants could be arrested and imprisoned for hard labor. But the county sheriff could hire you out. He could hire you out to white employers to work off your punishment for vagrancy. The courts customarily waived any punishment of white vagrants. So if you was white and just didn't have a job, you was okay. You could live in the street. But if you was black, you was going back to be a slave. And if you fought against that, the possibility was to be lynched, killed, vanished. See, we know about the lynches that we saw, but there's a lot of times they hid it. You don't know. It's people in graves all over this country we don't know about.
When did this happen?
The Black Codes?
Yeah, Black Codes.
So Black Codes happened after 1865, all the way up until some of these Black Codes still was in place even up until Jim Crow. So we could talk about even into 1880 that they still had it. Joe said, but it has to be a public display power that's been energized and amplified by social media. Now it spawns ultra hatred against the sympathizers and perpetrators alike. And I think what you're talking about, cuz, is police shootings. Ladies and gentlemen, sons of mine, we still living in these times. See, we can say that the Black Codes was 18 or whatever. But if you get locked up in the system here right now in this country, and they put you in there with hardcore criminals, and they criminalize you, we have people who have private prisons right now. We say that the convict lease system that's on that slide, right? Or when they said that they apprenticed you out. That's what they used to call it, right? When they come and grab your kids, because see, if they grab you for vagrancy and you got a kid with you, then automatically that kid becomes an apprentice. Now that kid is in the system, and you in the system. What does that sound like, Sean Anthony?
Slavery.
Slavery. Just by another name. Just by another name. So, what is the other part of black criminality and lynching? I want to hear y'all. What do you think is another part of black criminality and lynching? We talked about the lynching and the law, how they do you. How does it affect the mind? That's what I want to know. How does it affect the mind of black people, of you as a young black man, to see your peers and people going through this even now? What does it do to your mind?
It traumatizes you.
In what way?
In the fact that you realize just how careless people are, and just how out of one person's ignorance, not knowing the situation, not caring enough to understand the situation, that's your life. All because and it's mainly over something petty. The recent killing that we had, they said that girl had a knife, was of no immediate danger to that cop whatsoever.
But the question is, said he didn't. She was attacking someone else, and we can't dispute that. There is an attack, but let's answer. Regina said these acts are just evil. So Eddie, would you say this hatred that whites has against blacks is a spiritual thing? I will say this, that there is, and I see my brother-in-law said, no, it's natural hatred. There is a natural hatred here. But let's go back. Let's go back here. Let's go back. There are three parts of a lynching. Denial of human rights, public statement, example, killing for a message, as Teddy told me the other day, putting the head on a spike, and a desire to strike fear of a system, people, and actions. There is a spiritual part of that, I will tell you, that comes from the idea that the American system of law and public belief are based on their perception coming from over in England. Remember, who came over here, right? Sean Anthony is one of my he always tells me, Sean Anthony, we watch it. What do people come over and say? Why did they do evil? Because what?
God wills it.
Because God wills it. They ain't worshiping the God I worship. But they say it because God wills it. The Klan is a Christian organization. They advocate God. When we saw those people rush to the Capitol recently, they said they was doing it because God has given the rights to these patriots. So there is a spiritual component to this, right? They taught us to worship God. They taught us to look at the Bible as an example. But I would tell y'all something else that they don't tell you in your history books. The African knew God before he even came over here. Now, he can't read your words, your English words,
Or Spanish.
but he understood when you said the story. Oh, I know that story. I know that. That's why they cried out there in them fields. So we are talking about something. Okay, she said, but black hasn't done anything to whites, yet they hate us. How is that natural? I think the root is spiritual. It's acted out in the natural. I think it's dualistic. I think that it is dualistic.
That is
But-
a symbiotic.
Say again, Teddy?
relationship. Symbiotic relationship.
It's a symbiotic relationship. And I don't think sometimes we really understand that symbiosis that goes on. A lot of times I bring that up to people, and I don't bring it up to try to justify. But when we talk about a symbiotic relationship, we're talking about people who depended on each other.
And we know that your flesh depends on your soul, as your soul depends on your flesh to make it into heaven or elsewhere.
When we ask, why do they hate us? Because a lot of times, Regina, they've been conditioned to hate us.
And the reason that that conditioning came is because of the authority that they felt that they have. If I'm hovering over you with my foot, I could crush you just for fun because I'm over you. It doesn't really matter. They hate you because they have the power and the means necessary to hate you and to do something about that hatred and enforce.
However, they also need you, because if it wasn't for you, they wouldn't have learned how, they wouldn't have had people to work the fields, they wouldn't have the money that they had, they wouldn't have had the homes, they wouldn't have had any of it. So they need you, but they also believe, well, you're under me. I don't have...
They needed you. Now, as of right now, that you have rights, and they have acknowledged that you do to an extent, they have decided, okay, well, since you don't work for us, and since you are now becoming our competition, we will just kill you.
But they also...
Because I want to point out that the recent girl, 15-year-old girl, I believe that she was 15. Regardless, she was still a kid. And they said that she got into a fight with those girls, or grown women, and it came out of jealousy. That's because she was doing things online, and we know that now, that she was doing things online. They were jealous. She was competition for them. And now she called the police to defend herself. And now we realize you don't get the right to call the police to defend yourself. She didn't even weaponize the police. She had a right to be scared. She didn't know what those women were going to do.
If the impetus of a situation is corrupt,
They weaponized the police. She tried to defend herself, and she was punished for it.
there's truth to that. There's truth to that. But let's look at this. It started off as the impetus of the police started wrong. And we act like we expect it to be right. And it ain't going to be. I want to answer Joe's question, and then I want to get to Regina's. Joe said that, so can we say separatists were right? We've been striving to be equalized and graduate to acceptance and respect only to be continuously be reminded that justice and peace is impossible here. No, they're not right. They're not right. And I'm going to tell you why, because I love that question. Because, see, Dr. King made a point in his last book. He said, just because you don't want to kill me, don't mean you wish me well. See, we could say we want you to be free, but that doesn't mean that we want you to be competition, as Teddy just said. There's a jealousy here. There is a natural side to this. But we got to understand, too, something that Sean Anthony said. Without us, without the faith, the wherewithal, the ability to see over the hill when they holding your head in the dirt, we are the children of the slave. I don't say that to be disrespectful. Y'all know I get mad when I see that shirt saying I'm not my ancestors. No, I am my ancestors. Because everything that they hoped for, everything that they wanted is in us. And when we don't teach that to our children, then they don't have a full understanding of their heritage. And that's a powerful word. Their heritage. You have a righteous heritage. People died. They gave all so that you could sit here today. But I think if we go to the separatist mentality, we lose track on that. No, I'm here to help you. Even when you don't want me to help you, I'm still helping you because God gave me that purpose.
The comments were jumping.
Joe said, there are gifts among blacks and colored people like the abundance of resources in Africa. Everybody wants it and wants to control it. Herein lies the source of hatred, militia. Yes, that's true. Jada said, there's a jealousy indeed here. Philip said, knowledge of self is essential. Oh, it is. Oh, my brother, that you said something right there. Knowledge of self is essential. See, because when you got worth, I tell you, I teach you all that. When I know who I am, it don't matter what you say to me.
And that's exactly what this network is trying to do. We want you to have knowledge so that you know your value. You know what to do with that.
It keeps the anger down, the frustration. You know, I got a mama, and I love her. I love her. And my mama told me, she said, you seem frustrated. See, that's what we need to be listening to. We need to be listening to those who are giving us good counsel. She said, you seem frustrated because you hurt. These things hurt me because we got to teach our kids. We got to teach our people. I'm so happy for everybody who is on here today, but I see so many of us out here extending that hand. I'm so proud of you all and what you bring to the table, what you tell me, right? Some of the things y'all said today, because you bring that to your peers. You bring it to your peers. This Q&A session was designed to bring your peers in. I told y'all that. So that we can teach them things that you know, because Teddy, you just got out of high school. Shout out to you soon to be out of high school. They're not teaching y'all in school. Ain't no teacher standing up here telling you that bird was dragged across the road and killed because a white man wanted to kill a Negro. Nobody's teaching you about the people's grocery because a white man was jealous, and then we argue about reparations. Because after they killed them men, that white man went over and took over the store.
Yeah.
Nobody is teaching you your black history. Because see, it's shocking, it's hurtful, it's exposure. Joe just said earlier, right? All these gifts and wonders that are in Africa that you don't know about. All the gifts. See, I'm going to tell you something else too, and I've told y'all this. They lynch you because Regina asked that question. They lynch you also because they know who you are. Somebody knows who you are. They didn't go over to Africa to go grab no garbage.
Yeah.
I've told y'all lessons before. Columbus knew blacks had been here before he got here. And he followed where they went because he was like, man, they found out where the gold was.
That's why I use the head on a pike analogy. That shows a lot, because wow, that is a really strong person, and his head is on a pole. Somebody killed them, and they don't want those people like him, or anybody to see that and go, yes, we have the power, we killed this person, and these people are not welcome.
Because again, and Teddy, I love you for that, because again, we got to understand, what is the purpose of that? What are we doing? What is the message, right? Before because we're coming close, but let's look at this thing here. When I was doing this slide, I actually pulled this information. Can you see it? Can y'all see it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I pulled this information from Ida B. Wells' actual data. I'm gonna try to blow it up a little bit because I see it's a little small. Is that better?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So you notice that from 1882 to 1891, right? It's a 10-year period. Ida went in, and this fearless woman, and we gonna do a lesson on Ida B. Wells because that's my girl. Man. I have so much respect for that woman that we don't really cover, other than it's a project in Chicago, or the people don't really talk about as much. But man, that was an amazing woman. But anyway, Ida talked about
these statistics.
She said she tracked it from 1882 to 1891, and you see that increase, that spike.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all see that?
Both of these charts are from Ida B. Wells, right?
Yeah, these are her charts. So they were taking the statistics of how many were killed during those years, and you'll see between 1885 to maybe like 1888, it kind of plateaued out. Why you think that happened?
You mean it?
I want you to look at that period, and do you think you know why? Did they teach y'all why that happened?
No.
What was happening at those times after Civil War? What is that era called?
I can't remember the name. I think it's.
So we were coming out of what was called Reconstruction. Reconstruction went to 1877. And what started to happen was the laws that had been put in place during Reconstruction slowly started to be cut away. And so
Antebellum. That's what it was.
Antebellum. And so as we started to lose those laws, and the troops was leaving. So you can't move a troop deployment overnight. As the troops was leaving out of these areas that they had sectioned off in the South, the murder rate went sky high. And then educators did revisionists and said, hey, wait a minute. The Civil War wasn't even about what you thought it was about. We ain't got to give all this stuff to these Negroes. It wasn't about that. So then they went and what they decided to do was to pull all them laws away. Remember I told y'all earlier, we were talking about them black codes that then went into the Jim Crow era, right? Mm-hmm. One thing we need to cover real quickly is that everybody wasn't against each other. There were things called the Black and Tan movement, where poor white farmers and black people got together after the Civil War. There was a movie that came out a couple of years ago, right? The Free State of Jones. There was people even doing at the close to the end of the Civil War who said, hey man, I don't want nothing to do with the slavery thing because I'm poor. I don't have either. But you know what they told them? They changed the laws and they said, See, you as a white man get special consideration to do certain because you at least, what was the phrase? I tell y'all this all the time.
At least you're not a black person.
You say black person, but what did they say? You are not a nigger.
Not a Negro.
So the separation in mentalities happen. And we're going to get into this as we go this next week, because we're going to talk about Archibald Dunning. We're going to talk about Charles Carroll. We're going to talk about these men who wrote books and taught professors and taught black people to hate themselves and to see themselves as crazy, insane. But we have to look at that chart and see what Ida was talking about. But then Ida wanted to go deeper. She said, okay, I see the numbers, but what happened? You'll look over on the other side, it says rape, murder, robbery. You see how many people got killed for the idea of rape?
Yeah, and we still see today that people are lying about being raped.
253 for murder. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know too many people who want to be lynched, and they out here in the South trying to kill and murder. I ain't saying some didn't. But the thing that shocked me too, look at the very bottom down there. 32 people for no given reason.
Other than they could.
What about the racial prejudice? They killed them because they was racist. This is from their own words. They told Ida this is why these people died. So 13 got killed because they was arguing with whites. 10 got killed, one of the cases, just because the man said, I don't want to buy your seeds. They killed this man. 7 for rioting. 5 for race mingling. I'm going to tell you that race mingling should have been added to that rate. Because what I'd also said was that we didn't talk about the fact of the white women post-Civil War who were attracted to black men and were what they call miscegenation. They were getting with black men. This has been a huge part of where we are. And in these last couple of minutes, let me clarify to you all. I'm not preaching hate. I want white people and black people to come together. I want us to all understand that we are all a part of God's divine plan to be here on this earth to work with each other. But that's my hope. When it is being preached that we are different, we are secondary, we are not worthy. When it's being preached, when we look at the convict lease system, right, that shows you that there were former abolitionists, church groups, legislators who all got together and said it would be better that we don't lock them up. Let's put them all out there to work. You see the title of Matthew Massini's book that I have over here? It says, "One dies, get another."
That's a book.
This is post-slavery. States used us in jail post-slavery. This is after Civil War, right? Revenues 4 times the cost, 4 times, a 372% profit. But wait a minute. Let's think about something else here as we get ready to close out. Teddy, y'all brought up the young lady, Makia Bryant. I posted yesterday that in the area where that young lady lived in Franklin County, there were 20% of Ohio's blacks live in that area. They account for 33% of the state's police shootings. 33%. When you put people in a prison system, I'm gonna put my psychology hat on, you affect them. You change their way of thinking. You make them primal. Not a cognitive thinking, socialistic person. They're a primal person. Because they got to survive. In Ohio, the actual rate of black citizens killed by police officers is 340% higher than white people. 340%. Yeah. Now, rather that young lady had a knife or not, were you living in an environment where you know that the police will get their gun off? We know that to be the fact. Look at Tamir Rice. We know that they're getting out 2 seconds and they blowing you away. Lynching is still happening. Prison systems, lease systems are still happening. Black criminality in our children and in our society, in our neighborhoods, in our families are still happening. And the effect of it is not new. It didn't just start. It's been around for hundreds of years now. And the only people who can stop it is us. And we got to seek God. Seek God and seek wisdom. Teach our kids. Teach our kids. Invest in programs like what you're seeing here. Pastor Razor is doing. Invest in the spiritual and the natural warfare that you need to strengthen your mind, body, and spirit. Because we living in a time that we thought was gone, but it's cyclical. We done went right back.
They wish it was gone. We all do. But we still have yet to choke out that evil from the root. Instead, we prefer to beat around the bush because it's more monetary and scent coming from it.
Joe said, but we gonna Joe's question will probably be the last one, but it says, when you pump people with drugs and alcohol, it spurs aggression. Yes, but I'll also tell you, cuz, that the aggression really is growing in the lull. When I was in the Navy, you get that lull as the ship's going down, and then boom, right? That's when you hit the wave, the cataclysm, the catastrophe, right? But what are we doing in the lull? What are we letting our kids invest in? Watch, eat, feel, learn. And I'm going to close this episode by saying the reason why I put my sons on, because I feel we have to talk to our children. And I tell you boys, I talk to you at what level?
Of understanding, a level that you can clearly understand. Einstein said that if you want to reach people, you need to be able. True intelligence is able to break down something to the minuscule level.
There you go.
But we have to do that.
We have to be able to teach it at a lower level, not all at the same time, not with a flood. And we have to invest. We have to invest. We have to invest in the education of our kids. I love you. I love you, boys. I am so proud of the things you all put out today. I thank everybody who came on the program today. Please share this episode. Please share this episode. And next week, we're going to be back at this time. We're going to stay on this time. But next week, we're going to go a little bit further. We're going to talk about people like Charles Carroll. We're going to talk about people like Archibald Dunning. And we're going to get into why our movies and our things and everything are the way they are, and how that plays into the mental structure and psychology of our children. But thank you. Boys, you can tell everybody, whatever you're going to say, because y'all look shocked. But thank you all for tuning in with us today.
Thank you. The participation was wonderful. Thank you for submitting your questions in. We love to hear from you. We need more active people to show an interest, so that people, even if they say that we don't care, that they can at least see, no, there are a few that care, and this is needed. And if we do not welcome it, we know. What is it saying? We brung up Jesus, we brung up the spiritual. A nightly book that we read, the Bible. Even in the Bible, it says in Proverbs, wisdom, she's sitting there laughing, waiting for you to accept her, but we still have yet to let her in. Let's let her in and get this message out. Our kids are dying. Kids. That's something that no society should be happening. We hear about over in Syria kids dying. We are right here in the States and our own people are dying.
Left to right. Shadati, what you got? You got something before we sign out of here?
Yes.
We did come on 5 minutes late, so go ahead.
Thank you all for all the participation. Thank you for all the comments that you put. Thank you for the questions. And thank you for participating. And thank you for so much for what? It's hard to say, because though many people may not see this as very engaging and stuff, we really try to make it as engaging as possible. And yes, we try to raise up the issues from and bring up the past and the present, because there's no way that both of these are not connected. Both things are thoroughly connected, because it's like, where in the world did it all go wrong to the point where we came to this conclusion? Because all our people are dying, and as Teddy said, our people are dying in communities in droves. And if we can't solve it here, if we can't help other people from anywhere else, how in the world can we not help each other here? It's outrageous how so many of us have died, and some of us don't even know why. Some of us don't even know where we come from. We don't know our heritage. We don't know who we were and why we're so important. We don't understand what exactly we're supposed to do. And as we just covered, it's not only a physical fight, it's a spiritual fight, it's a mental fight. And no matter what they do, they keep trying to bring you down. They try to bring you from peace to their level. Because no matter how many times you've shown them that we will not engage in violence, they keep trying to bring you back down to that level of violence, because they think this is the only way anyone learns. But whenever you try to do violence, whenever you try to go and do what they do, you instantly pay for it. And they make it an example. And they tell others, this is what's going to happen if you decide to continue to fight.
Yeah.
That's what they did to our
All right, boys. Let's all sign off. We've been over. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We'll see you again next week. Please share. And we're going to be out of here. We're out of here.
Peace out, people.